I really do believe that if you want to do life differently, that sometimes you need somebody to walk by your side while you're trying to figure it out. And a coach is somebody who will do that for you.
Welcome to the Crucible Project Podcast. The Crucible Project is a nonprofit organization committed to creating a world of men and women who live with integrity, grace, and courage, helping them to fulfill their God-given purpose. This podcast will discuss important and sometimes difficult topics while delivering practical life applications with men and women who are currently practicing this work. We are igniting Christ-like change in men and women through experiences of radical honesty and grace.
Welcome back to the Crucible Project Podcast. I'm your host, Joy Dunning, and I'm here today with one of my good friends, Vickie Kerr, and Vickie's going to tell us a bit about her Crucible journey, and then we have some other things that we're going to dive into as well. So, hey, Vickie, why don't you take a minute and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Vickie Kerr, and I live in the Chicago suburbs of Buffalo Grove, specifically. I'm married. And we have 2 cats. I love crafting. I don't know what all you want to know. I love crafting. I love doing weird things with, being painting. Yeah, I love to travel.
Yeah, so Vickie is one of our certified leaders within our women's ministries. So she does a lot of work in helping guide women through the process of our Crucible retreats. She also leads groups and does coaching and training. She mentors. She's my mentor. So Vickie kind of like spins a lot of plates when it comes to Crucible things. And so really grateful to have you join me today and excited to hear some more about your story, but also how it impacts, your life as a whole, connecting with you and your husband and all of these good things. So let's dive right in. So when did you start your soul work, Vickie?
I started my soul work in September of 2016 with another organization. And then during the pandemic, so late 2020 and beginning of 2021, I joined the Crucible Project organization working on women's retreats. And I staffed my first weekend in January of 2021.
So how did you find out about Crucible?
My good friend, Lisa, she's the one that introduced me to soul work. And then she invited me to join the Crucible organization. I had to think about it. I wasn't sure exactly. Back then, I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do. But I wound up staffing a weekend, and it was just an amazing experience to see how this organization does things and how they help women.
Yeah. So I know that your husband is also involved in Crucible. Did he go before you, or did he learn about Crucible through you as well?
No, he went through Crucible in August of 2016, so he was way ahead of me.
Gotcha. All right. When you got involved in Crucible, I heard you say that you staffed an initial retreat. And then from what I know of you now, like I said before, you do so many different things within the organization. So first off, can you tell us what was the journey from staffing your first Crucible retreat to where you are now? What did that journey of leadership look like and your own work in the midst of it?
Like I said, I staffed my first weekend, and I really liked how the weekend flow of the weekend. And because I had some experience with staffing and some experience having some training and stuff, I started doing upfront teaching pretty quickly. That first year in 2021, I did my first travel to a weekend in 2021. And then I joined what's called the leadership track that we do. I guess I should backtrack. The thing with Crucible is they love to develop leaders. And they look at all sides of leadership and help you grow in that. So we have a leadership track. And so I joined the leadership track in 2021 to be a soul work facilitator and a group leader. I was able to move, I don't want to say quickly, but because I had this training already, I was able to do the things that I needed to do to become a facilitator. Then I decided that I really liked the one-on-one interactions, and I did the coaching training, and I really enjoyed that. I learned a lot of different things through the coaching training, and not only has it helped me grow, I've been able to help lead other women in those tools that I've learned.
Hmm.
And so I became a coach in 2022. I think the defining moment of when I really jumped in is I attended a second level weekend called Unshackled. The work that I did in there, I walked in just feeling like I couldn't do this work. I couldn't go farther. And I carried a lot of shame about that. I came out of that just being able to drop that shame and realizing that this was the calling that God has placed on my life. So I jumped in after that weekend. I jumped in to the coaching. I jumped into what I needed to do to be a soul work facilitator.
Yeah.
I jumped into what I needed to do to be a retreat leader. Here I am, 2 years later. I am a soul work facilitator. I am a coach, and I'm on the edge of becoming a retreat leader. And it's been a lot of work, but a lot of fun. And I've gotten to meet some of the most amazing women that I've ever met in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you have been on not only a journey of stepping into new places of leadership, but also learning new things about yourself. So I heard you mention that when you went to Unshackled, that was really a pivotal weekend for you, a pivotal retreat. And if you aren't familiar with Crucible second level retreats, we have what we call our initial retreat. So if you go to our website, thecrucibleproject.org, and you look at men's ministry or women's ministry, you'll see a list of upcoming dates that we have for our initial weekends. But then we also have topical weekends after that are called second level. So for the men, we have 4. For the women, we currently have 3 developed, and Unshackled is one that looks at the role of shame in our life. So really, without giving away too much about what the retreat is focused on, Vickie, can you share some of what was blocking you? I heard you say you walked in, feeling all these things, and then you walked out feeling differently. So what was the shift for you? What did you have to wrestle with there?
When I was growing up, I took on a message that said I couldn't do things, or I wasn't good enough, or I'll never succeed. And I carried those messages into my adult life. When I went to the Unshackled weekend, I had started I want to say just like taking the first layer of the onion off of those messages. But then in Unshackled, I was able to be real with myself and drop the pretending that I put in front of me to make it look like I had it all together, and really dive into where those messages were coming from, and to be able to, for a better word, get rid of those messages and replace them with the messages. I remember very specifically, was that I am worthy and I am now soaring. And I just remember that feeling of, this is it. This is the launch pad. And I'm going to take off. It really changed my outlook. I don't want to say, and it solved every issue I ever had in my entire life, but it gave me such an amazing foundation to jump off of. And I did feel that shift in my attitude of, I can do this, and I am worthy of being in leadership. I am worthy of being a soul work facilitator. I know what I'm doing. And I was able to jump off of that, and it gave me a base to come back to when those doubts started creeping back in.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I really love about our work, because, with Crucible, it's a 36, 38 hour retreat, really. When you come in Friday evening and we're done by Sunday afternoon, a lot of people think, how can things change so quickly in that short amount of time? And the reality is that things don't change. It's that you learn a new layer of the truth that has always been there. And so when we talk about stepping into the work and, especially thinking about how do you continue that? Like, how do you leave and 4 months, 5 months later, still, is it possible to even ride that high that long? It's not about riding the high of an experience. It's about being able to go back to, and now I know the truth about who I am, or now I know what's really true of me that has always been true of me, and I just wasn't knowing it before, thanks to all of these messages and things that got in the way. So that's really, really powerful to hear what that journey was like for you. I love the idea of recognizing the launch pad and, being in that moment of we're going to go places. This is exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what it has felt like ever since.
Yeah.
Just like, well, here we go. We're taking off again to this new adventure.
Yep. Well, one of the places that I know that you went is, like you said before, becoming a certified Crucible coach. I want to unpack that a little bit. Can you, first of all, just in your own opinion, in your own words, how would you describe what a coach is?
That is a good question, Joy. Because we're more than a life coach. We don't sit you down and say, okay, well, these are the decisions you're making and they're bad. That's not how it works with Crucible. It's one-on-one. You meet for an hour. It could be once a week, once a month. Meet for an hour with a coach. And we talk about what's going on. And a lot of times we look at, okay, so if this is what you want, what's stopping you from having that? And then we start digging into those reasons of what is stopping them from getting what they want in their life. And the only time we give advice is if they ask for it. We don't push them in a direction. We just guide them to find their own truth.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes many sessions. Or we talked earlier about the onion layer, that we took off a layer. And then now you want to go, now it's, let's look at the next layer. I like it because it's one-on-one. And if I don't do it on person, it's pretty easy to do on Zoom because it is one-on-one. I feel like it's really good for the person that's being coached, and it gives them a more personal experience in what they're looking for.
Yeah.
There's an opportunity to really dive deep.
Yeah.
So, and of course we pledge confidentiality in all things. So
very helpful. Yeah, you mentioned that you don't give advice unless you're asked for it. Crucible has a saying about advice, Vickie. What do we say about
yes, we
unasked
do.
for advice?
It is generally thought that giving unasked for advice can come across as criticism. So we try to not do that. Because we don't know. We can't say that we know better than the person who's making these decisions. We'd like to think we do sometimes, but so we just guide them instead of like pushing them into a direction that we think they should go.
Yeah, that makes sense. Without getting into the details of anybody's personal story, what does that actually look like? Do you have any specific methodologies that you use for guiding a person through the process of discovering more about themselves in a way that's true? Or, trying to get into, if somebody's never engaged with a coach, what might they expect? At least, if they went to our coaching page and picked you as the coach that they want to try out, what might they expect stepping into that session?
Well, the first session is kind of a get to know you session, but after the get to know you session, we start with doing what we call sachet check-in, which is we're checking in with our emotions and some context. And then what I do is I'll review what we talked about the week before the last session. And then the first question I ask, so what is it that you want for yourself? Or, what is the reason you're coming for coaching? And sometimes it's like a long-term issue that they've been struggling with and they just can't seem to get past. No matter how many times they've staffed or done a weekend or anything, they can't seem to get past it. We look at that, but we can look at it in all different ways, because we could do soul work, or we could do any number of exercises that would help them look at something in a different way. And then once we go there, I'm trying to be as high level as possible here. So once we do whatever work we're going to do that day, I tend to give them homework to work on until our next session, like whether it's journaling or a challenge to take care of something or notice something or watch how they're saying something.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much what we do during a coaching session. And they look different every single time. Sometimes it can be a big soul work, we're getting into their bodies, and other times it's just looking at the different voices that they have going on, the different messages that they're playing around in their head.
Yeah. Yeah. And for someone who might not be familiar with what we're talking about, can you explain what you mean by getting into their bodies? What are you talking about there?
I have heard some wiser women than me say, our issues live in our tissues. And when we experience trauma or sexual abuse, abandonment, physical abuse, mental abuse, what happens is it starts living in our bodies and it can cause us to be sick or stressed out. And so a lot of the work we do is when they're looking at a situation, we try to get them to move their bodies, whether it could be beating on something or pulling on something. We really try to get them to move and get into their bodies and start feeling where those issues are living in their bodies.
Interesting. Yeah. One of the things that I really appreciate about Crucible coaching is that, at least from my perspective, it seems like it can be applicable to anybody at any time. I think about some of the other types of coaches that are out there, business coaches, and they step into a certain season of your business journey and offer perspective based on where you need to go from point A to get to point B. But then, if you sell that business, you don't really need that type of coach anymore. And so this type of coaching really sounds like something that can help. Maybe you are a business owner, maybe you're a leader in your organization, maybe you're a stay-at-home parent trying to, love your family well. It sounds like what Crucible coaching offers can be applicable in all contexts. Does that feel accurate to you?
Yes, I think it does, because it helps with the inner person that you are. Knowing that we can't change other people, it helps you be able to react better to whatever situation that you're in. So I feel it can help anybody, whether you are a CEO of a company or a stay-at-home mom, which I think is harder than being the CEO of a company, but that's a whole other thing. But it's a different hard, and so I think it can help just about anybody that's open to wanting to learn more about themselves.
You reminded me of a saying that comes to mind for me often, of wherever you go, there you are. And
Yes.
it's that idea of, if you're in a hard situation or if you don't like your current setup in life, just deciding, well, the problem is where I live, I'm going to move and that'll fix everything. Or I'm going to break up with this person and, start a new relationship. Like, wherever you go, there you are. Until you start to deal with the you that's showing up, you're going to just recreate, maybe different circumstances, but the same dynamics in most places. So, engaging with a coach or some kind of mentor can really be sometimes that game changer of perspective that helps you say, and I'm going to do it different this time, with some practical steps. So I'm curious if you have any practical steps that you can share with us. Obviously, I know it's all very specific to whatever that individual that you're coaching is going through. But if somebody's, thinking about, we're coming up at the time that we're recording this, we're coming up to the start of another year, a new year. And so maybe somebody's saying, as I'm looking ahead, I don't want next year to be just another repeat of this year. What are some practical steps that you might give someone that you're coaching to start to move in a different direction?
Let's use your example about how I don't want this next year to be like last year. So my first question is, well, what do you want for 2025? Instead of looking at the negative, because it's easy to say, well, I don't want this. I don't want to sit on the couch all day playing on my phone. I don't want to, but what do you want instead? So that would be the first thing I would ask. What do you want?
Yeah.
And then the second thing I would ask, if you had that, what would you have deep down inside you? Who would you be? Sometimes I even ask, so give me an example of what your day would look like if you had this, just from the time you get up to the time you go to bed. What would your day look like? And then get into the deeper stuff. Well, what blocks you from already having that? Because you could already have that. So what is blocking you? And then we start looking at those blocks and where they come from. And it could be a million blocks. And we try, each session we'll look at one. Yeah, there could be quite a few blocks.
Those are such powerful questions, because like you say, it's so easy to be able to say what I don't want, but trying to put on that imagination, that, like idealization of, so what do I want? Because the reality is that you can't go after what you want if you don't even know what you're going for. If you can't
Mm-hmm.
see the finish line, like how do you know where to go? That's such a powerful question of even just, for anyone listening, if you're trying to figure out, where do I go from here? How do I start to do things different? Ask yourself that question. What do I want? And, if you're
Mm-hmm.
feeling stuck around, maybe you've been in a place where that dreaming part of you has been so shut down that you don't even know how to think of what you do want. Even that is a good one. I want to be able to think of what I want to do. And that's absolutely something that it sounds like, one of our Crucible coaches, or, the work, if you go to a weekend, that there's so
Mm-hmm.
many places where you can start to really dive into that. And one thing that I want to make sure that we say is that you don't have to go through a Crucible weekend to engage in coaching. So if you've
Mm-hmm.
never been on one of our weekends before and you're listening to this and you think, sounds like something I might be interested in, you don't have to wait for a retreat. You can go to thecrucibleproject.org/coaching, and we have our list of coaches there. And actually, all of our coaches offer that free 30-minute introductory session. So that's like what Vickie was saying, a chance to get to know each other a bit and, make sure that it's the right fit for you for a coach before really diving into some of the deeper questions that you have and things that you want to work through.
You brought up an interesting point of, there's some people that they've just been so like either beat down by life or just so busy doing whatever they're doing that they don't even think they can dream about a different way of doing
Mm.
things. And I just encourage you to take the risk to set things aside and just take 10 minutes just to dream
Hmm.
of what you want your life to look like. Because even that 10 minutes, it could be so worth it and it could be life-changing.
Thanks for that. What else is on the horizon for you with Crucible? I can share Vickie and I got to participate together in one of those second level retreats a few months ago, looking at some of the dark sides, called the dark side of leadership. So looking at, as we show up in leadership situations, what are some of the darker parts of that? And, how do we show up in ways that maybe we don't want the people who we're leading to know that, like, ooh, this is a dynamic at play for me. And one of the things that was really cool for me about that retreat was it was our first time doing it. So the women were actually being taught how to walk through the different processes of the retreat. And there was a particular staff man there that Vickie has a special relationship with. Um, her husband, Jordan, was part
Oh, he's
of.
ever so dreamy.
So he was a part of helping teach us some of these processes so that we can put this retreat on for other women. And so, yeah, Vickie, it was so sweet to get to know your other half during that time, and get to spend some time digging into soul work, in even a mixed group of people, and get to know him a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So how does soul work impact you and Jordan, especially with you being in a leadership position? What does that look like when you bring what you know individually about soul work into a marriage?
Good question. Not to brag, but Jordan and I have always been pretty good about
Hmm.
communicating. But I think both of us doing this work and learning more about ourselves and learning about each other has helped us to communicate more effectively to each other, to ask the hard questions without like, well, okay, he
Hmm.
can ask me hard questions without me getting hurt, because that was always an issue. I'm very sensitive and want to be the perfect wife. So this has helped us heal in those areas where it's like, oh, I can say, hey, why did you do that? Or what was your reason behind that? I think it's opened up
Hmm.
ourselves to have healthy, hard conversations. And he is very supportive of where I'm at. He said he was proud of me
Aw.
because I was going to be on the podcast. I'm just going to put it out there. So no, he's really supportive of where I'm at. It was sweet that he came and helped with the leadership, dark side of leadership, but it strengthened our marriage. We're much closer. We are much more vulnerable with each other, and we find we're
Mm.
not competing with each other. That's been like the really
Yeah.
good things that have
The
come
not
out of that.
competing with each other.
So
What a concept. I don't know that most people would admit that that's a dynamic in their marriage, or necessarily put it that way. But when you think about most of the issues that spouses have, it really does kind of boil down to that competition. Either one's trying to be right and make the other one wrong, or one's trying to have suffered more than the other one. Especially for young parents, like the who got the least amount of sleep competition. Um, and in those types of contests, we all know that nobody wins and everybody loses. So having a framework where you and your spouse, I can say my husband is a Crucible guy too, and we've experienced the same type of thing where we go from being on opposite sides of an issue to recognizing and remembering we're on the same team. And it's kind of like us against the world, us against whatever issues want to come our way. But at the end of the day, we're fighting for the same home team. So how do we do that with integrity and with grace and, with courage? And it's not an easy thing to do. And I'm so grateful that there are other people like you and Jordan and the other women and the other men that are a part of the organization that my husband and I can individually and as a couple learn from, because, who better to tell you about the road ahead than the people who have already walked it. So really grateful for the community.
Yeah, so am I. Jordan and I don't have kids, but I feel like we do marriage pretty good. And we don't speak into other people's marriages because that unasked for advice thing. And but I hope we can set an example for younger couples too. That it doesn't always have to be a battle.
So what would you say to someone who is considering stepping into coaching, but not quite sure what to expect, or, not sure if they're ready for it?
Well, you know what? I would say at least sign up and get the free half hour interview and see if it is a good fit for you. I think coaching can help anybody. And I really do believe that if you want to do life differently, that sometimes you need somebody to walk by your side while you're trying to figure it out. And a coach is somebody who will do that for you. But I would encourage you to take the first step. It's a no commitment half hour. So just dive in, take that first step.
As you can hear, Vickie doesn't bite. Our coaches are really wonderful people. It's going to be worth your time.
Yes. Yes, we have great coaches. I don't know the guys as well as the women, but I can tell you the female coaches or women coaches, they're fantastic. And they're amazing women, and they have a lot of life experience along with a lot of training. And any one of them could serve you well.
Well, Vickie, before I let you go, is there anything else that you want to share with us, whether it's about your journey or, being a coach, something that you learned, someplace that you want to go, your hopes for next year?
Well, I'm excited about next year. I'll be honest. You first asked that and I was like, oh, I'm so excited about next year. We have weekends all over the world and I'm so excited what's going to happen next year. But for those that are listening, I encourage you to do a weekend, to sign up. It is life-changing. This work has been life-changing for me. I went from being manipulative and not trusting women to embracing female friendships and being direct and forward and asking for what I want. And it's changed my life. And 2025 is going to be a good year. I'm excited for what's going to happen. I know for me personally, it's, I'm going to get to do a lot of weekends this spring. Not going to Kenya. I'm sad about that, but I'm going everywhere else. And we have weekends coming up in Chicago, in Wyoming, in Dallas. So I encourage you, get online, check them out, and come see us. It'll change your world.
The men too. We have retreats in 16 communities throughout the U.S. and 4 countries. So there's no excuse in the world to not come. We're here for you.
And we're fun.
Yes, that's something I was actually just mentioning the other day. A lot of times when we talk about soul work, people think of it being this heavy, hard, emotional stuff. And sure, it can be. But there's also so much freedom in it of getting to know yourself and embrace who you were made to be and being able to step into that and say, wow, I can be goofy. I can be fun. I can be, step into situations with confidence because I know who I am and I know my worth and I know that it's rooted in Christ. And because of that, I get to be who I am and not feel the need to put on these masks and hide. So
Yes, so true.
I'm grateful for you stepping into that and for the impact that that's had on your family, your community, and also for women's work as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And then you and Jordan together too.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
If you are looking for real friendships, both men and women, authentic friendships where you can be yourself and be accepted no matter how you show up, I encourage you, check it out. These are some of the most powerful friendships I've ever had. Joy being one of those. I can't emphasize enough how important that is and how valuable having authentic, deep, authentic friendships is.
Well, thank you for your time today, Vickie, and for sharing your story. Again, if you heard anything that Vickie said and it resonates with you, go to thecrucibleproject.org/coaching, and you'll see Vickie's picture up there, and you can schedule that half-an-hour interview, whether it's with her or one of our other coaches. We'd love to get to know you and step into whatever God has for you alongside of you.
For more information about our weekends, please go to thecrucibleproject.org. Or if you're ready to get started on your transformational journey right now, you can connect with one of our Crucible certified coaches for a free 30-minute session at thecrucibleproject.org/coaching. That's thecrucibleproject.org/coaching. If you like what you heard, connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Rate and review wherever you are listening, and don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. Thank you for listening.